Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch, and later in the program we will be featuring the Street Talk interviews that we recorded last December, and this was with members of the public in the Bourke St Mall in Melbourne. But for now, our guest is Ashleigh Belsar from Australian Christians. Welcome, Ash.
Thanks very much for having me, Gavin.
Good.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, I hear that you're a very passionate animal lover. In fact, you've got scars to prove the fact.
I do indeed.
Last night you went and rescued, 20 penguins?
It was probably about 20 penguins. I mean, the scars are very small. If you had a close-up, you'd see these tiny little things. I think I whinge about it. My wife says I whinge about all kinds of little pains.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, a heap of them somehow got up on the boardwalk where they shouldn't be, and they ended up under a stair recess, and the only way to get them out was for me to wiggle in on my back as far as I could till my head was hitting the bottom one of the stairs, reach my hand back as far as I could, and to get them out I had to grab the penguin, let it bite me, and once it bit onto me I knew I could grab it safely and pull it out. So safely for the penguin, very painfully for me, and then pass it to the next ranger. It was very much one penguin out, one penguin to the next ranger, then they passed it on to another range and then put it over the boardwalk back where it should have been. So I don't know how they got there or why they got there, but I have these very minute scars to prove that I grabbed them out.
Fantastic. I'm glad that you're suffering for these wonderful little creatures.
Got to suffer for someone. Something smaller than you.
Yeah. So this is at Phillip Island?
It was, yes. So been living there for 23 years now, so definitely not a local, probably never will be, but my grandkids maybe.
Okay. So you're a park ranger, would you call it that?
Oh, kind of. It's Phillip Island Nature Park there, so it's as good as a park ranger. Basically, it's a not-for-profit organisation that exists only on Phillip Island, and its sole purpose, apart from looking after penguins, is looking after all the wildlife and nature reserves on Phillip Island.
Fantastic.
And I get to be a part of that, which is great.
Wow. Okay, so you're a bit of a tree hugger, an animal lover.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And
nature lover in every respect. Yeah.
Positive view on life.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, so you've got a couple of little penguins of your own, have you?
Yeah, I do. So one's a 3-year-old called Jarrah and another 1-year-old called Aluka, and they do, well, Aluka can't walk yet, but she'll be waddling soon enough.
Okay, so they're still in nappies and diapers, right?
Well, no, the older one's not, and he would be terrified to hear you saying that he was in nappies. He is overnight, but we'll keep that quiet, and the other one very much so.
Okay, great. So children are very important too, just like these little penguins.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah. In fact, before I had kids, I thought, I guess we'll have kids. I guess I'll like it. Then you have kids, you're like, it's the best part of life. It's the best phase in life I've ever been in, being a dad. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm sure you get pecked and scratched, and there's a bit of poo around, like the penguins. Yeah,
and a lot more. I mean, rolling in penguin poo last night to save the penguins, it's not nearly as smelly as cleaning a 3-year-old. That's for sure. Not that he normally needs cleaning, but he'll be, Daddy, poo-poo, and I'm like, okay, it's my job to come in and clean you up. Fair enough. Yeah.
Great stuff.
Just going with the peg on your nose.
Exactly. That's the way. And where's your wife at the moment?
She's down at McDonald's. It's a good spot, good bribery to keep the kids happy. Great parks, things like that. So your background, you did a sort of a Bachelor of Arts? Yeah, did fine arts. So I did painting as a major.
Yes.
I did minors in ceramics, sculpture, a little bit of photography, but painting was what I very much liked.
Yes.
Then as I moved out of university, I started working part-time in environment, which is still where I'm at. Originally I wanted to go full-time. Realised that full-time rangering involved a whole lot of gardening and things like that I never liked doing at home. And then, so I've stuck with that part-time, but my full-time job is we own and operate a small outdoor education business. So you'd hardly call it work, but my job literally is teaching people to surf, taking them on kayaking, snorkeling or mountain biking tours, and keeps me very much in the outdoors with the wildlife and in nature. Yeah.
And you kind of occasionally ask them to save the penguins as well, is that right?
Yeah, well, that's exactly like last night. It doesn't happen too often. The penguins normally know what they're doing, but occasionally we get thrown in the mix to help them out a little bit when they go wayward. Okay,
so you're a voice for them, because they can't speak for
in a way, yeah. We're representing the penguins. We're allowing people to come there and watch them without hurting them, and by people being there and understanding them in its own way, that very much does protect them. Yeah.
So with their pecking and biting, would they have experienced pain, do you think, as you sort of pick them up and move them?
More fright. Yeah, I'm sure you could make them experience pain, but where you see them come in, a lot of them wash over rocks. They're very hardy, so we grab them by the foot. and they don't like it, something that much bigger than you grabbing you, you're going to be pretty frightened. So their initial reaction is to bite, and then when they bite, you can kind of get them a bit safer and pull them out. And I dare say it doesn't hurt them at all. I hope it doesn't, but it certainly frightens them. So that's where the bite comes in. It's very defensive.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's change gear a little bit here and move into, what about the young baby in a womb, and it might be fighting for life. It's about to be aborted. Is it experiencing pain?
We can only assume so, particularly if you're looking, it's debatable, but if you look at, particularly in 2012, there was a lot of hearings done in the US, and some of the states wound back their abortion laws, brought the term back in weeks because of the testimony of doctors. One doctor would be Anthony Levatino, their testimony, and he was a doctor that performed a lot of abortions. He's now actually turned 180, he's pro-life. He eventually realised he couldn't keep doing it. His position now is that they clearly feel pain, and he certainly wasn't the only one, and so they've wound back the laws. I have heard some people say you can't prove it. My point would be, let's put the shoe on the other foot and say, can you prove they don't? And when we're dealing with something that is clearly human, clearly alive, your philosophical point of view may be that they're not persons or not personhood. That's purely a philosophical point of view, but scientifically it's human and alive. And I love living in a society that so values children. You look at the people that are the most evil in our society, from a perception basis, it's going to be those who hurt and abuse children. And I wish that could go back to that preborn age, because it's still a child. And if there's any doubt, give the child the benefit of the doubt. I mean, at the very least, you should be offering anaesthetism for an unborn. Like, I ideologically don't agree with abortion, but if you do, you should at least, okay, let's make sure pain's not felt. Yeah, but as you'd know as well as me, the methods used for abortion after 22 weeks, which was the position from 2008 in Victoria, we have dilation and extraction, which is commonly known as partial birth abortion, which involves bringing the baby halfway out via the feet, putting an instrument in, crushing the head and bringing it out. Up to 40 weeks, you can't tell me they don't feel that. And even if you do, I'm going to say really. But even the more that I don't think is practiced anymore. It was practiced in Croydon. I'm not sure where they are with that, but the more regular method is dilation and evacuation, which is probably a lot worse. That's between 22 and 40 weeks. It can be earlier than 22 weeks, but it's the only method they use after 22 weeks, as far as I'm aware. That involves pulling the limb from them, so foot comes off, arm comes off, arm comes off. The device goes in, crushes the skull and pulls the rest of the baby out. Now, if you're looking and thinking you can, 28 weeks onwards, basically if you have a premature baby, it will survive. Yet you can use this method up until 40 weeks, and you can't convince me that they don't feel pain. Even if you're completely ideologically opposed to pro-life position, you should still go, fair enough, they could feel pain, let's just at least give anaesthetisation. But I think it highlights the argument in its fullness that it's actually not about the baby. It's more than anything, people want an excuse in our postmodern age to do what they want, have their own personal rights, and I'm all for personal rights, but without responsibility. And I say rights, no worries, you have your rights, but you have a responsibility for those rights. And in this day and age with contraception and whatever, there's a lot of different, it's not that hard. I might come from more of a conservative point of view with a different moral background, but even if you have a very different moral background to mine, there's still very little reason and very little excuse for abortion, and particularly something so brutal as what we have in Victoria, which is considered in the top 5 most brutal abortion practices in the world.
So, Ash, here you are for animals and these voiceless creatures who you will go out in the middle of the night and save, as well as the voice for the unborn, and you will go out of your way to save them as well.
I love life. Life is so important. It's so amazing. There's something about, there's exceptions to every rule, I'm sure, but I think when you have something that is vulnerable, and our little penguins, if it wasn't for human intervention, would have disappeared a long time ago. Once upon a time, before Europeans lived in Australia, they did what they did fine. As Europeans, my ancestors came to Australia, a lot of things were changed, and a lot of good things, but a lot of things, particularly bringing things like foxes, houses, dogs, cats, it changed the cycle very much so. And penguins were so vulnerable that without people coming and without people putting their time and effort into looking after them, particularly in areas like Phillip Island, they would no longer be. They would have disappeared a long time ago. And so very much I see it as my responsibility as well as a passion, because it may not have been me personally, but the life I live and the life that's been set up by my ancestors coming from Europe has made the difficulties for the penguins. And so it is my responsibility in a way to help out where I can.
Yeah.
As well as being one of the best jobs on the planet.
Great. Well, thank you, Ash, for that information.
Yeah.
You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and our guest is Ashleigh Belsar from Australian Christians. Now, Ash, your wife, her name's Esther.
It is, yeah.
And where does she come from? What's her family history?
Yeah, originally her family moved out from Burma, so she's from the Chin area. And originally they shifted over to study. This is in the 90s, and the situation politically got a bit diabolical, and they ended up having to stay as refugees, and they've been here since then.
And you like curries?
Love curries, yeah. That was a benefit of marrying an Asian, was the food, very much so.
Fantastic. So you've got a taste for fine arts, fine food,
fine women.
Good
my
living.
wife will be happy that I said that.
Good. I'm glad that you slipped that in. And we're going to come back for a moment about observation is being informed. So would you say perhaps that the pro-choice lobby is not a pro-informed lobby group?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, I wrote a piece on that recently about, often the argument's divided into pro-life and pro-choice. And I very much put the suggestion up that it's not pro-choice. It's not pro-informed choice. It's this is what we'll tell you. And I tend to get a feeling that there's, a small academic elitist trying to hold the information and reinterpret it, and almost treating women as being a bit silly, unfortunately. And if you look at the information that would go against abortion, it's not just for the unborn, but it's also very much for the women. So you probably are as aware as me of the depression suffered by a lot of women post-abortion. In fact, it's known as post-abortion stress syndrome. And the celebrity Claire Dawson actually pinpointed the beginning of her depression that led to her suicide being after her abortion.
That was a very interesting revelation by her in her book, and I think a lot of people didn't want to acknowledge that was her assessment, her review of her life, looking back. Where did this depression start? And that's they're her words, and that's a legacy really which she leaves, I think, and causes us to rethink the situation that here's this little time bomb about to go off, this post-abortion trauma, and we need to be there for the women who are suffering.
Yeah, and that's it. It's indiscriminate, like depression in general. You can't pick it. And I think it was 2008, there's a documentary called The Choice on SBS. Now, SBS is not the bastion of conservative thought, let's put it that way. But this was an SBS documentary, and interviewed a number of women after their abortion. Now, they didn't all have depression, but a number of them had lasting depression that they could never quite get over. It's a really interesting documentary on the issue. And so this is what I'm saying about informed choice. At least from the mother's point of view, say these are the possibilities that you may have to suffer with short term. Depression can be lifelong and hugely debilitating. But even other possible medical risks. I was reading recently there's been over 70 studies done on the link of abortion and breast cancer. Now, they don't all say that breast cancer is linked to abortion. In fact, 13 said it didn't. But that leaves the rest of them saying that it did. So even if it's not completely conclusive, I think we should be telling women there's a possibility that this could lead to health risks, physiological in terms of breast cancer, emotional and mental stability with depression would be a terrible thing to have to live with. And so it's not really an informed choice at all. It's more an ideological position held by people who want to control, I suppose, how women think and treat women as foolish and unable to, they are saying you want the truth, you can't handle the truth, and that's kind of the position they're taking, whereas the truth is very important for us to understand in the decisions we're making.
So being involved with Australian Christians, this was something that you moved towards politically because you actually had children. What went on then? The fact that you have a son and a daughter, what moved you to be more proactive?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I always had a bit of an interest in politics, but it always seemed too hard. I thought, how can I ever do anything? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have the pedigree for it. Then as I had children, I thought, it's no point complaining about the society you're in unless you're prepared to do something. I see government as an extension of us, not something I can simply complain about. And I didn't want to get to 70 or 80 years old and go, look at the situation we're on and had done nothing about it. And I do believe individuals have much more power than they think. So particularly in a good country like Australia that is democratic, enough people standing up and saying enough's enough will definitely make a difference. And going to different pro-life events, I realised how many like-minded people there were. And what I had seen or thought of as fanatics were very much just common sense, middle of the road people. And I thought this is very much something we can win and something we need people who are prepared to take that stand in politics.
Okay, so ordinary, middle of the road people. Let's go back to one of your champion heroes, William Wilberforce.
Oh, brilliant person, yeah.
So what did you learn from his life?
Well, I learnt that sometimes it's the fanatics that make a positive difference. So if you look at history, you can have people that have strong ideologies. Some of them, I guess if you were looking at communism, had really bad results. But if you look at people like Wilberforce, some of the people before him and after him, they were quite ideological in what they believed. They were known as evangelicals, probably seen as fanatics. But they brought down firstly the abortion trades, the slavery trade. Then they secondly, Freudian slip there, secondly they brought down slavery itself across the British Empire. Then you move on to some more of my heroes. If you look at Governor Gipps, so I live in Gippsland, named after him. He was actually governor in New South Wales, but he is recorded in history as being the only person to try and prosecute white people for killing black people in colonial Australia. And same, it was because of his evangelical conviction that all people are equal regardless of skin colour, and I would say in abortion regardless of age.
And coming down to present day, what reading do you do?
Oh gee, I've got this pile of books on the side of my bed so big and I'm just like, which one do I pick up? I love history and philosophy. I love politics. I love to see how it relates to our life. And I love science and facts. Realistically, I was never smart enough to be a scientist. And if I was, I probably wouldn't have been silly enough to be a politician. But I love reading about science and reading about how things work. And I guess bringing that back to abortion, I love looking at the photos of the unborn and how amazing it is. There's this sense of that is so beyond understanding. When you can't see it, you don't appreciate it. When you look at these photos and you see this 12-week-old heart beating, little fingerprints, it's just so amazing. I love reading that sort of stuff, yeah. Just to try and inform myself and get a good understanding. Yeah.
Yes. So being an artist, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
It really is, because you can have something explained to you, and if you're like me, I just switch off. Whereas you see it and it brings the story to life, yeah.
Well, Ash, what's important here is that we're telling stories to each other, and because you have children, once you didn't, but now you do, it wants you or stirs you up. What sort of legacy do I leave as a parent, as a father in this case? And you are becoming a voice for the voiceless, and for that I appreciate this interview. You're watching Support Life, and that's all for our conversation with Ash. But stay tuned, because after the break we'll be back to our street talk interviews that we recorded last December with members of the public in the Bourke St Mall in the city.
Hello Sammy, thank you for coming on Support Life on Channel 31. Today I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Sure, welcome.
Do you consider you value human life, and
Absolutely, we do human life, because without human life, this life will not carry on. We just will stop, will vanish on. So we have to continue, definitely, on the earth.
Tell us what you know about the current Victorian abortion law.
I understand that it's up to full term at the moment, which is like massively, I would say it's a crime against humanity to abort kids, that instead of giving them a name and maybe buying the clothing for them, getting ready for a baby cot and all the stuff. And instead of doing this, just to send them to this. This is by all means, it's a crime.
Have you or anyone you know ever been affected by the loss of a loved one? And how did that make you feel?
Actually, I know a few cases, and I found actually even ladies that went through this experience or bad experience, even 20 years after that, they are the most affected people by this. The kid's gone, but the mother is still suffering. Sometimes even they cry. Some of them even they think it's like unforgivable sin. Some other people, they definitely understand that they committed a crime against like an innocent human being.
If you heard that a pregnant woman died, say in a car accident, would you consider the child in her womb as a second death?
Absolutely. It's a human being gone for the accident.
When does human life begin?
At the very moment of conception, definitely. Once the sperm and the egg get in together, that's it, finished.
Would you say a baby is considered human at 3 to 6 months in the mother's womb?
Even from the very first moment of conception, 3 to 6 months, you can even see the heart, the head, the heart. You can even hear the heart, all the organs. It's a full person.
Under what circumstance would it be justifiable to terminate a child in the womb?
Only if it is definitely determined that the life of the mother definitely is in danger and they cannot be saved unless abortion. So one has to go.
Do you think people are influenced by political and social pressures to abort a child?
Yeah, definitely they do, especially those young people. If they don't have like a clear vision about humanity, they could definitely be affected by what's going on in the media, 100%.
In Australia, 100,000 children are aborted yearly. What do you think of this?
I would say this is a Holocaust actually for kids, by all means. If it is done intentionally like that, 100% this is a Holocaust. I wouldn't give it like any less term than that, yes.
And if another sector of our human race was so mistreated, would you be motivated to stand up and do something for people's rights?
Definitely I would stand because we would like to be the voice of those voiceless. Those unborn kids, they definitely need someone to defend them. So we should be defending them.
Thank you so much, Sammy, for coming on our program today.
It's a pleasure.